Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest ALTA Insights webinar. I'm Jeremy Yohe, ALTA's Vice President of Communications, and today we've got a great presentation lined up to hopefully help everyone understand a little bit better, to understand what it takes to handle real estate transactions involving some type of cryptocurrency. Before starting, I need to always touch on some of the obligatory housekeeping items, so apologize if you've been on these before and you've heard me say these numerous times before. All of our webinars are recorded. You'll get an email with a link to the recording, and you can always access all of our webinars at alta.org/webinars. Again, that's alta.org/webinars. The email you get will also include a link to the presentation, and you can also download it now from the handout section in the GoToWebinar window pane. If at any time you have a question, submit them in the questions box. We've actually already got a few already submitted. We'll hold a little bit of time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. We do expect to be pretty full. We got a lot of content to get through, so if we don't get to your question, the speaker's email is at the end of the PowerPoint. And I do need to thank New York State Land Title Association for partnering with us to offer this important webinar. And also want to remind everyone that the content is for educational purposes and should not be construed as financial or legal advice. So please seek counsel, or others to help you make any informed decisions. And with that, let me introduce today's speakers. And you'll see on your screen, we do have one little black box. So as we joked before, we're talking about technology. Sometimes tech fails. So unfortunately, Alex's video feed isn't showing, but you can Google his name and find out lots about him. I'll give everyone an abbreviated bio, and we'll get into the content. First joining us, we have Andrew Zenkel. Andrew, say hi. There's Andrew. His name's up there anyway. Andrew is president of Core Title Services. He is a third generation of his family in the title business. Andrew serves as chair of the New York State Land Title Association's Technology Committee and is associate chair of the Real Estate Working Group for the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance. Also, we have Alexander Kanan. I can't see him, unfortunately, as I said. Alex is founder of Kanan Law Firm. He's represented many clients involving digital currencies, and he also chairs the tokenization and real estate working groups for the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance. Andrew and Alex will probably talk a little bit about what that group does and the important work they're doing in regard to blockchain. And also, we're fortunate to have Piper Moretti. Piper is founder and CEO of LA-based, I deleted the name. Piper, tell me that I had EXP, and it's not EXP. Oh my gosh! Oh, it's on the screen.
It's actually on there. It's the Crypto Realty Group, and I hang my license with EXP, so all good.
Very good. All right. Sorry about that. And Piper has completed several crypto transactions out there on the West Coast in California, and she also serves on the National Association of Realtors Crypto Presidential Advisory Group. So everyone on the call today been involved, experienced with cryptocurrency transactions, and hopefully going to pull back the covers a little bit of what's all involved. So with that, Andrew, I will turn the conversation over to you.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Do you want us to each say a little something about ourselves, or just go off what you said?
If you want, if there's a little bit more flavor, you'd like to share, if you want to talk a little bit about the Blockchain Alliance, feel free. Otherwise, we got a lot to get through.
Okay. No problem. So just going to start off by saying that this is all very new still, even though crypto and blockchain have been around for years. Every day there's new ways of doing things, and the whole crypto and blockchain and real estate title it's changing constantly. So everything we say today could be different in 2 weeks. So just take everything with a grain of salt, and everything we discussed today, make sure you discuss with your underwriters, talk to legal counsel, and make sure or reach out to any of us or all ALTA, and we will help guide you best we can. So blockchain, I figured I'd really start with telling what blockchain is. Blockchain is it's a shared immutable ledger. It facilitates recording transactions and tracking assets. It's really a distributed database, I guess is a good way to say it. At its heart, blockchain's a record transactions. It's like a traditional ledger. They track money, goods, secure data. It stores information in a way that makes it virtually impossible to add or remove or change the data without being detected by other users. It's decentralized. Transactions are verified by a central authority, like a government or credit card clearinghouse. In blockchain, everything is decentralized. So the verification comes from consensus of multiple users, miners, nodes. The benefits of blockchain are this trustless, it's immutable, it's unstoppable, it's decentralized, lower costs, it's peer-to-peer, it's transparent, and it's really universal. So it's a very important piece of technology that's been around for about a dozen years now, more than that actually, and it's changing things around. So Piper's going to talk to us a little bit about Bitcoin, which is different. It's part of blockchain, but it isn't blockchain itself. So Piper.
Yep. Okay. So yeah. So Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency that was created. It was created back in 2009, and it was simply the blockchain was created simply to move funds. It was just to record transactions, and that was it. So if you Google Satoshi Nakamoto, that is the person or persons, we're not really sure, it's a pseudonym, who created the Bitcoin blockchain. And if you read the white paper, it's very short and sweet. The whole point was to do without banks and a peer-to-peer transfer of money. So, for instance, if you just do it the way that we're doing it now with Web 2, Venmo, let's say, if I Venmo Andrew $10, it's going to take a couple of days to get there because it's got to go through my central bank, and then it's got to go through his central bank, and then he gets it in an ACH payment. So, but if I were to give him $10 worth of Bitcoin, it is peer-to-peer, and he can get it within a few minutes, honestly. So that's really all it was designed for. And then, do you want me to talk about Ethereum, all the other altcoins, or are we saving that for another?
Alex, do you want to jump in on this, or?
Sure, guys. So again, my sincerest apologies, everyone. I promise you, I'm actually here. You just can't see me. But of course, there's a universe of terms and things that I'm sure a lot of us have heard mentioned before. Some of these have become real buzzwords, and some of them are I think more technical in their definition. Of course, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, these are things we heard a lot about, right? And I like to think of cryptocurrencies, these are just blockchain tokens. In essence, these are different types of tokens, and each of them have different functionality, different value to the marketplace. But generally speaking, these are all blockchain tokens. And the same could be said for stable coins. These are different tokens, and each of them have their own sort of their own value, if you will. So you have currency tokens. The best known, as Piper just mentioned, the best known currency token is Bitcoin. You have things called security tokens, right, or equity tokens. These are tokens. These are basically digital representations of conventional investment instruments, or shares, or membership interest in LLC. You have tokens that kind of cross over into utility. These are like platform tokens, participation tokens. So these are all different tokens, but when we refer to cryptocurrency, that's really what we mean. We mean blockchain tokens, each of which represent different things. I hope that kind of fills it in and reduces it down to basic, simple language a little bit. And needless to say, fiat is the money as we know it, and a lot of the advances that the technology offers today is actually to solve some problems that fiat money, historically has brought about. Some of which we can get into perhaps later in the discussion.
So the fiat doesn't refer to a car. It's just talking about a general term applying to any type of government-backed monetary unit.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is sovereign money, if you will. And dollar, of course, being the best and the strongest known example we know of. Yes. The concept of cryptocurrencies is it might be new, but it's based on some age-old concepts, some of which have to do with distributed ledgers, and earliest examples of that going back to 500 BC to the island of Yap. So there's different conventional sort of notions which have converged to represent what we know today as cryptocurrencies.
Alex, sorry, could you talk a little bit more about on the screen the stable coin? I was thinking about the closing table, and how that plays a role in this. Is a Bitcoin considered a stable coin, or do you have to make a Bitcoin a stable coin? Can you help me understand that a little bit more?
Absolutely. I think historically stable coins came about out of the need to have a peg to existing currencies, so that in essence a stable coin would represent a conventional analog dollar, for example, in a digital world. So that was the earliest and the simplest example of a stable coin. Some of the better known ones are stable coins like Tether, for example, and those coins are literally tethered to an existing currency like a dollar, and some of them are collateralized by existing assets and currencies, baskets of assets and currencies, and some of them are algorithmic stable coins. Of course, we're going to see less of those in the coming future because of the recent fiascos that have come out of some of the Terra scandals and things of that sort. So generally speaking, stable coins are digital monies as we know it. So as the space develops, I think we will hear a lot more about stable coins, because in essence, I see it as a financial apartheid that's looming, because on one hand, we have this emergence of stable coins, which now allow us to have a digital representation for analog monies, and with all the benefits that come from that, as far as removing friction and bringing in higher efficiencies and peer-to-peer interaction, removing intermediaries, reducing reducing different issues as far as intermediaries are concerned. So all of these benefits will come, but on the other hand, the governments, I think, have began to see real benefits in the technology that underlines stable coins. And I think there is a huge, robust move now, both politically and geopolitically, to now implement this technology and use it for sovereign digital monies, which you're going to see a lot more of in the coming future. China is coming out for digital yuan, Russia digital ruble, so on and so forth. And needless to say, US is leading the way with CBDCs, which are to represent our digital fiat currencies in the future. So that's what I mean by an apartheid, because on one hand, you will have a decentralized sort of distributed world of blockchain that's focused more on stable coins. On the other hand, you're going to have an institutional world of existing institutions which are going to try to harness this technology, but try to fit this round peg into a square hole, or whatever the proper expression is. Pardon my lack of knowledge of American expressions, but that's in essence what stable coins, I think, hold as far as their potential in the future. I'm sorry,
Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I think the most important thing with a stable coin, especially when it comes to real estate and a lot of other circumstances, is it reduces the volatility of crypto. So you're not going to see a 10% swing in a day like you can see on Bitcoin or Ethereum or another coin. It's pegged to the dollar, it might have slight volatility, but always stays right around that $1 mark. And I think that's very important when you're dealing with transactions, because you might not get what you expected when there's a 10% swing in a couple hours. Correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. The word stable certainly speaks for itself. You're absolutely right, Andy. In fact, these stable coins are a very important part of the entire ecosystem, because while we are enthusiastic about technology and we're true believers, I'll speak for myself, in Bitcoin, at the same time, the world is not denominated in Bitcoin. The existing business transactions do not take place in Bitcoin denominations. Everything is reduced down to dollars, and so you're absolutely right. Stable coins have a very important role to play, because they provide that bridge between truly crypto assets and currencies.
Thank you, Alex.
Well, definitely a lot evolving here with the transfer of digital funds. We recently held a webinar a couple weeks ago on real-time payments, and one of the speakers said, okay, the next step beyond real-time payments is like real-time settlement. So customer comes to the closing table, they're with the settlement agent, attorney, whoever's going to be handling disbursement of funds, and they send that request for the payment, and they're right there in the closing room together, see each other, and they approve it, and then the money is sent to the title company.
I mean,
interesting concept.
You just hit the nail on the head, Jeremy, because it's literally a new world that we're entering, because we're going from this world of T+1, T+2, T+3 settlement times to this new realm where the interactions are peer-to-peer, almost zero counterparty risk, and the trade either takes place or it doesn't, meaning the consideration and the token either trade instantly, real time, no counterparty risk, or they don't. So it's truly transformative. Absolutely.
Okay, so just to kind of go over some transactions that we've seen happening with cryptocurrencies, Piper, you want to maybe shed some light on some of the transactions you've done or give examples that you've seen?
Yes. I actually did a few transactions way back in 2017, 2018 using Bitcoin. Before, in 4 of the 5 that I did, we didn't have any type of escrow company. We're separate here in Southern California. We do it a little bit differently than most of the country. We've got a title and escrow are separate here. So escrow handles all the monies, and then of course title does title. But I didn't have an escrow company that could handle these types of transactions. Now I do, and it's a lot easier. And they went on to do about 25 million, I think, to date in volume. So they're still doing it, and they act as a settlement or a sub escrow, I should say, to any title company in the U.S. But most of mine have been here in the South Bay of Los Angeles, Manhattan Beach, El Segundo. I did one up in Santa Barbara County. But yeah, I mean that was before before any kind of lending platform. We had maybe a couple, but there are way more creative ways to do it now than I did it 5 years ago. Even we've come a long way.
Very true.
Yeah, and as you said, I think everyone on the webinar understands that California said it's very different than everywhere. I'm in New York. We don't even do settlement here. The title company, there's a bank attorney that handles that.
Okay.
I think every state has their own customs or regulations, and we don't even have CPLs in New York. I mean, it's different everywhere, and that's why everyone can get some basic information from this webinar. But you're really going to go and see your local customs and regulations and figure out how things are done in your region.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Piper, in Southern California, the questions aren't escrow companies, independent escrows?
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much, for the most part.
In New York, early on, there was there was a sufficient amount of uncertainty as far as regulatory oversight was concerned, which allowed early participants to do a lot of things that are no longer possible today. Namely, early on, we were able to accommodate certain transactions because there was no purview over how cryptocurrencies were to be handled, how they were to be custodied, how they were to be transferred. And once that kind of that window closed and New York instituted bit license requirements, which pretty much knocked everyone out of the water who was in that business and allowed only a handful of participants to participate. I think generally New York is a good example of a state that tries to, rein in the potential of the technology, and some of it is healthy. I think some, healthy amount of regulation is good for this space. But as Piper mentioned, each state, and Andy, this is his world, he'll confirm it. Each state, each township have their own nuances, their own recording systems, their own rules and regulations. So it's like a minefield of different requirements that one would have to navigate. So standards, of course, we can touch down on it a bit later, but standards are a big problem. When we did our early on deals, this was straightforward. I mean, this was literally us sitting in a conference room, connecting to Wi-Fi, doing test transfers, and hoping for the best. Our first deal closed as pretty much just an emergency situation. A bank pulled out last minute. There was an issue, and basically we got the seller to accept crypto as consideration. So the early deals, unfortunately, were they're very difficult because you didn't have all the tools that we have now, to allow parties to hedge themselves from certain exposures as far as cryptos are concerned. And I imagine a lot of things that we see happening today, a lot of things that Piper sees in California and in Florida, a lot of things that Andy sees in New York, a lot of these things are kind of in line with what's already conventionally allowable, right? We have this parallel universe where all these documents get recorded and all the necessary payments and taxes are paid, and a portion of consideration is settled in crypto. But that's just a small example of how these deals are done.
All right. I think there's definitely there was an uptick for a while in transactions happening nationwide. I think as we've kind of gone into a crypto winter, as people call it, or a bear market, which is the last couple of days, a week to kind of reverse it a little bit, but a lot of these have slowed down. I think we've all noticed as the price dropped, people were all uncertain, especially the public. So I haven't seen as much interest in this recently, but as we all know, the market's very cyclical and it's going to come back and much stronger, and it will continue to do so. I think about a year ago, you saw a lot of information about Miami. There was a bunch of condos that were sold, for I believe Ethereum it was sold for. What was $12 million, I believe. So, pretty significant transactions. Piper, Alex, have you heard it? Any other transactions outside the ones we discussed that are of interest?
Yeah, I mean, I partner with an agent in Puerto Rico where both real estate and blockchain are just booming right now. The whole island is an opportunity zone, and they've been in rebuilding mode for quite a while now. But yeah, we sold a luxury SFR in Cabo Rojo. It did attract we were selling it for crypto. We did attract a crypto buyer. This is before the bear market, but he didn't want to do KYC for whatever reason. And he ended up paying cash for it. But I mean, if, had all the ducks been, put in a row and everything, he would have paid Ethereum for it. But yeah, we've got other developments there as well, DAO opportunities, all kinds of really cool things are going on there.
Yeah, same here, Andy. While we started out doing a straight sort of crypto to crypto and crypto to fiat deals, And we developed, a set of protocols that helped us, take these deals from beginning to closing. But generally speaking, they fall all into like one category. First of all, it's almost without exception a fee simple absolute, right? As far as the title interest is concerned. Secondly, almost without exception, this is an unlevered asset, so there's no existing financing, institutional financing. And thirdly, almost without exception, there is no institutional financing involved if it's a commercial asset, because a lot of institutional banks, in our experience, remain very, very squeamish. I don't understand some of it because we have ways of completely hedging them from any concerns, but still it's more of a cultural thing, I gather, as well. So we would go through, or everything that we need to figure out as far as qualifying the deal is concerned, the who, where, and what, who is the client, what type of property it is. Like I mentioned, there's certain types of properties that are not good candidates. Co-ops in New York City, forget about it. If it's a complicated, highly levered commercial portfolio, forget about it. So there are certain things that are not good candidates. KYC AML used to be very important previously because it was on us. Nowadays, you have vendors that do virtually everything for you. They provide all kinds of reporting and vetting that you need as a service provider. And then as far as the technical issues for the transaction itself is concerned, many of them have had to do with very basic concepts. Number one, defining the price, how the price would be denominated in these deals. As we've discussed before, sometimes it could be denominated in units of crypto, sometimes it could be actually the actual dollar value. Then addressing any delays, problems. Oftentimes early on, what we would do is we designed what we called spot closings. So a lot of due diligence, a lot of actual grind and work was done in advance. And what we would do is we would do a spot closing, which would be a contract and closing same day. And that would be one way for us to, just limit that time period because of volatilities. So these are some of the examples of what we dealt with before. And I imagine going forward, we're going to see more of the same. We're going to see a lot of unlevered assets, a lot of fee simple absolute assets, which are going to be acquired using digital assets. But as far as practicality is concerned, I still do not anticipate any of these deals settling 100% in crypto, meaning there's always fiat that's needed for payments, for taxes, for title companies recording fees. So usually it's either crypto that gets converted at the outset of the transaction, or dollars that are posted in escrow and the balance is paid in crypto. This way, there's always fiat to settle these transactions. Sorry if this was a long-winded, guys.
Not a problem, Alex. So maybe let's move on to more of the requirements that you need as a title agent. Someone to prepare yourself for a transaction. So I mean, if you're contacted or you're open to doing this, obviously first speak with your underwriter. That's what the first thing I did. I called up my underwriters and just discussed with counsel what the minimum requirements were and what you have to take care of, and so you're set, because this is not going to be an overnight process. You need to put some time towards this and a lot of thought, and make sure you're protected, your clients are protected, the buyers are protected, the seller, everybody, your underwriter, all parties. So one of the first things you're going to have to do is set yourself up with a payment processor. Most of these transactions nowadays are, in essence, cash transactions. You're not going to, the title just, for the most part, unless you really put a lot of thought into it and work, you're not going to be handling the crypto, and most underwriters wouldn't even want you to. They're going to be transferring the crypto to a processor. The two biggest, I think, out there are BitPay and FormPay. They don't do just for real estate, they do for every industry. They're crypto processors, and they will take in the crypto and then transfer you the US dollars or fiat. Now, if the seller decides they want to accept their consideration in crypto, they can always accept that. Obviously, there's steps you have to take you have to protect everyone in that instance. But as a title agent, everything, all your payments have to be in US dollars. There's that's a definite for your transfer taxes and your premiums and mortgage payoffs and real estate taxes. Everything has to be coming, your title has to come in US dollars. That's pretty easy when you work with a payment processor. They usually take about a 1% fee, something around there. There's exchanges I've heard you can work with, like FTX or Coinbase. I haven't had any experience with that, but I know that it is an option as well. And usually the processor will take care of the KYC and AML, which is extremely important. It takes a lot of pressure off the title agent. But I will reiterate that this is something that can't be done overnight. Takes at least a week more. So if you think you want to do these type of transactions, you should start getting the ball rolling, sooner rather than later, because you might have someone come to you and say, I need to close in a couple of days, and you might not be ready for them. I also think everyone needs to consult with an attorney, whether you have one on staff or one you work with, just to make sure everything's legally compliant, the safeguards are in place, riders, anything you need, agreements, just to protect all the parties. So, Piper, do you have any suggestions as far as requirements that you've seen?
We did a little bit differently here, but yes, I mean the first action I would take is definitely do like a proof of funds, get like a proof of funds like you would normally do in a transaction, like a regular transaction. Have everyone verify the coin, and that's where you work with BitPay, ForumPay, Crypto.com is doing these as well. And that these people obviously do like the KYC AML. We don't necessarily use attorney. We're not really an attorney state here in California, so the people who are holding everyone's hand in this are the payment processor and the escrow company, and of course the agent. And then title, as far as that's concerned, I mean, if it's a cash transaction, I mean, it's really a cash transaction at the end of the day if you're converting. So there's really nothing's really different in that kind of scenario. But as far as requirements or anything, that's really it. I mean, KYC is just the big one.
Yeah.
It's Andrew. Sorry, go ahead.
Please, Jeremy.
My question was, and Andrew, you touched upon it a little bit. So, you have the Bitcoin to pay for the loan, but how does monies, how do you get the digital currencies to pay for other settlement costs that require US dollars? You just have to exchange enough Bitcoin on the front end and, say it's.
As far as for your title fees and for your transfer taxes.
Any other closing fees, any other tax. Yeah.
You can have the processor, you send that amount to the processor, and they do an ACH to us and deposit the US dollars with us, or they could just do that outside of the crypto. You send X amount of crypto to the processor for the transaction, and then just wire, bank check, however they would normally do it for the title fees.
Okay.
The broker fees. I'm sure brokers don't really most won't want to accept crypto. Any of the fees that that you have to do US dollars, you could do that outside the crypto, or send the crypto to the processor and they can convert.
That's what we've always done. Yeah.
And then any funds left over, you would just send back to the customer.
Yeah.
So the problem is really third-party custody, because the technology allows virtually any vendor out there to accept cryptocurrencies for their goods and services. As Andy just mentioned, it literally doesn't concern them, because the money coming into their bank account is fiat, and they never have to touch crypto, which is very important because it's a misconception that people have. So the real problem is really with third-party custody. The real problem stems out of holding crypto that's not yours. But these platforms that Piper and Andy mentioned are instrumental because it is thanks to these platforms that a lot of these transactions can actually settle without too much exposure to crypto.
Good. So let's go through the workflow real quick. I mean, basically, and I'll have you guys chime in on this. We went through it very basically before, but if someone decides they want to accept crypto, they're going to contact usually a realtor like Piper. Say, I want to sell my house on the beach or my my apartment in New York City or wherever, and I'd be open to taking crypto. Correct, Piper? And then once that's known, they can find a buyer for that, and go to contract, work with the attorneys or the brokers who are preparing the contract. Obviously, there needs to be extra safeguards in place, whether it be riders or agreements. Once you're in contract, how have you seen the escrow deposit being handled? That's one question I had for Piper and Alex.
Are we talking wallet to wallet? We're doing like a wallet to wallet scenario.
I mean, just general, yeah. With
So usually,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Piper. Usually, escrow services are provided by this is a regulated activity, so it's provided by a company that's licensed and authorized to do it. So some of the companies you mentioned are licensed companies, and these companies are authorized to hold third-party crypto in custody. Companies like BitPay, companies like BitGo is also a good example because they have multi-sig wallet functionality that allows parties to transact without a third party like escrow in some cases. But yeah.
I was asking because in New York, since we don't do settlement, title company doesn't hold escrow. The attorneys will hold the down payment. So I was curious about California, how it worked over there.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I personally have not done a wallet to wallet, but I'll hit the conversion first. So I mean, when it's a conversion, it automatically just gets transferred to fiat, and escrow does hold it in their own account. So it's held there. So, but in a wallet to wallet, and we've gone over this a few times, with the escrow company, and we're prepared for it. There are banks out there that can hold custodial wallets for the escrow company. So, a bank like Cumberland or something, you would have to open up a custodial wallet, so to speak, and then you could hold the funds there if you wanted to do it that way. I mean, but I've had, and Alex can probably speak better to this, but I do have a colleague in the South that's been doing these, and they just do the funds, they do the wallet to wallet transfer like at the table. So we do and he's licensed in like 23 states. We do an initial deposit, a good faith deposit here. So we've got two different deposits going. Usually once the first one goes through, everybody kind of breathes a sigh of relief. Okay, they're not kidding. They really want the house. They're not trying to scam anybody. But yeah, I mean, they're physically there, and they're signing disclosures, and they're signing, hold harmless agreements, and everyone they're all on the same page, so it's all done legally, and also, and then they're verifying that the crypto went from one wallet that's in the contract to the other wallet that's listed in the contract. So.
Absolutely. I mean, this stuff can get really technical and finicky. And wallet-to-wallet transfers actually are, in my view, the best and the most problematic. So you have to be extremely careful. But early on, you're absolutely right, Piper. Early on, that's the only way we can settle these transactions was wallet-to-wallet. We didn't have a lot of reliable sort of tools and service providers. So it was literally wallet-to-wallet transfers, a part of which was already in escrow in form of fiat. And the last bit of it would be settled wallet to wallet. So you're absolutely right. That's how it's a big part of how these things were, and I imagine in many ways still are done. But nowadays you have these vendors that now alleviate all these headaches from you as a practitioner or as a real estate professional. You now have these vendors who can provide these services for your clients. So it's beautiful because your client, if you have a client who has a property, he wants nothing to do with crypto. you can provide him or her with the comfort of knowing that he will never have to touch crypto. He can advertise through his real estate professional to the world that he'll accept Bitcoin without ever having to touch a single crypto transaction. So in that way, it's really useful for real estate transactions, for peace of mind for people.
Hey, Andrew, I had a question as far as, when the settlement agent or title agents putting the closing documents together, closing documents or even beforehand, the loan estimate, what value, what number do you put on the LE and the CD?
I'm sorry.
It's still US dollar. It's still US, ex-US dollar. You're not mentioning any type of cryptocurrency.
Speaking from a New York title agent, we don't do the CDs here. We're not settlement agents, so I don't have experience with that. But I mean, if you're doing it with the payment processor, where it's in essence a cash transaction, everything is listed in US dollars. I mean, you have to peg it to consideration to pay transfer taxes, to base your policy amount on for everything. I'm going to accept $1 million, but in Bitcoin, well, it's $1 million, and you have to lock in at a certain time $1 million, and it's X amount of Bitcoin equals $1 million, and that's what everyone agrees on at that moment. And $1 million is the sale price.
Yeah, a lot of the triggers for taxes and things like that are really the fair market value or the purchase price of the property. And you can buy a property for 1 ton of oranges, as long as the fair market value of those oranges could be quantified in dollars, like Andy said, and put in all the documents. Then you can buy for oranges as long as the dollar value is ascertained and agreed upon. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you do lock in that rate at that moment, Alex, what have you seen, Piper? You see some sort of an agreement signed by all parties that you're accepting, X amount of units of Bitcoin at that moment, when you're closing at the closing table for the consideration, so everyone's protected, because an hour later that might be worth something different.
Yeah, in a wallet to wallet, I would definitely get all of the on paper, that, I mean, you can only deal honestly with crypto savvy sellers. I would never have someone, that just thinks that crypto is a great idea, for accepting for that, especially here in Southern California when you're dealing with, multi-million-dollar transactions. It's not just a hobby, they really need to know what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, prior to the close of escrow, burden of volatility is definitely on the buyer. At 5 p.m. close of escrow, if that Bitcoin that, equals a couple $1 million that was just sent over to the seller, if that tanks at 501, that's on the seller, and it's got to be written up that way. Now in a cash transaction, yeah, I mean, if it's $1 million condo, they're going to get $1 million no matter what Bitcoin is doing. And once it's transferred into fiat, that's done. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, back to what we mentioned before, it's important that there's a meeting of the minds between the parties in terms of how the deal is to be denominated. If it's to be denominated in dollars, then it's just equivalent amount of Bitcoin to match that amount in dollars. Background wise, what we did a lot of, in fact, that's my preferred way, is to do spot closings, because for us, a lot of problems really stemmed out of the volatility of the underlying digital asset. So obviously, to hedge ourselves from volatility, we would, if it was just a straight contract, then there's literally a dozen different clauses that we came up with that would mitigate different changes in the market and how that would affect the parties' rights to either terminate the deal or get an extension, kind of analogous to like a financing contingency, if you will, or like a funding contingency that's sometimes referred to with conventional transactions. So spot closings were the best way for us to protect ourselves from it. All the work would be done in advance, and we would have contract and closing same day if it was pure, crypto. Otherwise, you would guide clients through setting up, BitPay accounts and BitGo accounts and go that route.
All right, and I mean, obviously the rest of, outside the funding, the closing is done the same way. I mean, once you have your funds, everything is signed, you're moved to get the deeds recorded, issue your policy, and congratulate everyone.
Exactly.
In an effort for time, I know we're running a little long here. Maybe we should get over to some of the rules and regulations.
Quick question here, Andrew. You and Piper mentioned it or answered it in the questions box, but you had mentioned the 1% fee for the payment processors.
And that's what I've seen is pretty standard. Piper, what have you seen? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, BitPay and FormPay are both 1%. Crypto.com is 0.5%, at least with my escrow company. They might be different for someone else, but that's what they're advertising for us.
Other ones out there that have popped up, and you just got to vet them out. And I mean, those are just the ones that I've heard of the most that we've been mentioning. But there's plenty of other vendors out there, and just do your research.
Is this then a pass-through fee, or does the title company absorb that?
No, that's title company's not absorbed. That's a pass-through. 1% of the transaction could be pretty significant, I would say.
It really can. And the reason why I like these, it's because they're compliant. I mean, they work with FinCEN. They've got open books. And all the KYC, all that is on them. And you can actually get somebody on the phone. So, if you find one of these guys and you like them, stick with them.
Yeah. When you do your research about, as I said, it's not just those few we've mentioned. There's a lot out there. Just interview them all, speak to them about their processes, about their security, about their regulatory concerns, and where they are, and whoever you feel most comfortable with, work with.
And so it's the title company that would then determine which payment process.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You said, well, let's jump through a slide. We've touched on a lot of these.
A lot of stuff more for informational purposes, but we can, I think, getting to the rules and regulations, that's a little more important because it's already 250 almost.
Okay.
I mean, know your customer, AML. I mean, we all know what these are. It's for money laundering and knowing who the person is, and we've been through it. All the title agents already. Piper with brokers, Alex attorneys. We deal with this on a daily basis. So you don't really have to discuss it, but just understand that these have to be done, whether by the agent or by the processor. These steps definitely have to. FinCEN is something that title agents are very familiar with. As far as I know, FinCEN considers this as a funding, and if there's no lender involved, this is if you're in one of the regions where there's FinCEN reporting with the GTO, you need to do your reporting just like you would do on a cash transaction.
Yeah.
Alex, you want to touch on any of these, or Piper?
I mean, I think we talk a lot about this, guys, in our other sort of meetings and organizations. Of course, regulation. And in my view, regulation is good for this because it brings in different things that are relevant and important, such as investor protection laws, anti-money laundering, know your customer. All of these have a very legitimate sort of foundation, and like it or not, we're gatekeepers, right? The settlement agents, the lawyers, the bankers, the accounting firms, we are seen as the gatekeepers. So while there's all these vendors, thank God, that can provide us with these services, the responsibility is still on us. So to a great extent, a lot of these, like Andy said, are existing requirements. These are somewhat removed from crypto. These apply all across the board, but of course, it includes crypto. And I think some of the later rules that came out of Fannie Mae and some of the more recent industry initiatives reflect that. And you have the different companies, private companies, that are also joining these initiatives. So I think generally speaking, you have a crypto community that's embracing these different rules and regulations, because I think the general understanding is that the only way digital assets are to find a true place in our life is if they do comply fully with the existing frameworks. And to that end, I think there's some states that have made more of a progress or headway, if you will, than others. I think we alluded to this earlier on, guys, when we talked about all these different states, and each state has different laws and regulations, and some of them are not compatible and don't communicate. So I think this is as good a time as any, maybe, to kind of visit that conversation briefly, because while there are some states that I'm less passionate about, the states like New York State that unfortunately makes everyone who wants to participate in this space to come and first kiss the ring. There are other states that actually have been much more open-minded about it, and much more progressive, if you will, as far as reforms and regulations are concerned. Are you guys open to discussing a couple of those states? I mean, you all know my passion is with Wyoming, but I don't want to jump the gun and get into that conversation.
I think we're running low on time, so maybe Jeremy, go to the next slide, and Alex, give a brief, synopsis of the, Wisconsin and was it Nebraska, what they're doing, and I'll add to that. Florida's pretty progressive, not necessarily with the legislature and like this, but I think Florida, you're just seeing a lot of these transactions. It's just their open-mindedness. You see, the mayor of Miami, is very into crypto and understands and is pushing the narrative. There's definitely Texas, you're seeing it a lot. You're seeing some areas, California, but these, as far as going the legislative route, Wyoming, Nebraska, it's really cool what they're doing. So Alex, why don't you just brief us on that?
Sure, indeed. Very, very briefly. So you're absolutely right. I mean, so you have a whole group of states that are now, making real progress. But by far, the real leader, in my view, is Wyoming. Firstly, because they've been at this before the rest of them, and secondly, because they have very real, concrete, extremely informed laws that are passing. So just there's too much to discuss about Wyoming, but some of the relevant stuff going on in Wyoming, I think, is worth mentioning. One of them is the special purpose depository institutions in Wyoming, which are to perform like crypto banks. I think Avanti and Kraken are some of the better known ones. Caitlin Long is a superstar in Wyoming, and so is Tyler Lindholm and a bunch of other figures who are really.
Isn't Cynthia Lummis isn't she also very?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? Of course she's one of the superstars. But some of the really important changes are, first of all, this digital bank charter. I think it's a big deal, and I think Nebraska is literally copying what Wyoming is doing. I think it's important to mention that Wyoming actually exempt digital currencies from money transmitter laws, which is the opposite of what New York did, which opened up a whole, an entire fertile sort of a sandbox to test things and to see what works, what doesn't. And no less importantly, they have regulation that now allows Secretary of State to use blockchain for commercial filing. So now you have UCC that is implementing distributed ledgers for lien priorities and enforcement. Again, it's very important to mention that these are sandboxes. This is very specific, limited to the state, but it's important because traditionally questions of property have been delegated to the states, and questions of investor protection, like securities laws, have been delegated to the federal government. And here you have a very interesting relationship, because Wyoming views this as a state issue. This is a property. They acknowledge that digital assets are property, and they're exercising their jurisdiction over them. While the Fed is saying, fine, it is property. However, securities are a subset of property, and the securities are under the purview of the Fed. So you have this dance that has been going on for forever, and probably will continue for perpetuity. But Wyoming is really making a lot of really important changes. For example, lien priority is a big one, because to ascertain who owns a digital asset, what is the location of that digital asset, and how can you confirm that the digital asset being transferred to you is not liened or encumbered by some other obligation. So these are all the nuances that Wyoming is actually tackling as we speak, and providing some really amazing regulations and very informed sort of leadership as far as these problems are concerned.
Thank you. That's very interesting. There's a lot of other, we could talk about blockchain and all the different subsets for hours. I know we're running out of time. We were discussing different things like the land records, which is a whole nother subject. There's some companies like Figure, which is a lender, that they're creating their own version of MERS called DART on the blockchain, which is, I think, really interesting and a great utility. We haven't even touched on DAOs or NFTs or there's so much. This could be a 10-hour webinar if we really wanted to. So we try to whittle it down to the most important things about the transaction, and hopefully everyone got value out of it. But Jeremy, I don't know if you have Q&As you want to.
Yeah, we've been kind of, getting through the majority of questions throughout the conversation. Piper's, multitasking.
I was.
Piper is a superstar.
But I'd help out a little bit there.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes left. I got some wrap up comments, but if you have any, we'll try get any other additional questions answered. One question came up about the different versions of disclosures or hold harmless letters. If you want to reach out to any of the speakers, independently, maybe they can help you out with kind of a general document.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's also region specific. The different what we do in New York is different than what they do in Arizona or California or Florida or Wyoming. So, but I'd say talk to your underwriters or reach out to us, and if we can't help you, we'll point you in the right direction.
For sure.
Yeah, these typically aren't going to be in the agent underwriter contract. So should an agent, work with our underwriter on every transaction that could potentially involve a cryptocurrency to get sign off, get approval?
I think every underwriter is different. I think you should get, I would say it's a high liability. So I would definitely, anytime you can do this, consult with your underwriter, at least until they have a comfort level that you know what you're doing and that you can do things right. But yeah, I would speak to the underwriter always about this and keep them in the conversation, because they might have concerns. And for them, it might be also their first time doing it in that state, specifically. So they might want to just learn with you and work through the whole issue. Because the more comfortable they are, then they can guide other agents. So I'm in constant communication with my underwriters about anything to do with this. Even when I first came up with the idea to work with cryptocurrencies within my company, I spoke with each underwriter at length and just went through every question they had and every concern.
Andy was one of the first people that I became friends with through this blockchain space, and he's one of the better informed title industry professionals that I always bounce ideas off of. So please don't let him fool you. He's extremely knowledgeable, and
thank you.
I would encourage anyone to reach out.
You can't tell I'm blushing. Thank you.
All right. We are at the top of the hour. I've got one more question, and we mentioned at the top that you really need to know what your state's good funds laws say. ALTA has a working group looking at each state and which states may need to be modified to be able to handle cryptocurrency or any type of digital funds transfer. We talked a little bit about Wyoming, and what they're doing there. And most escrow laws, say that the funds need to be held by a federally insured account. Are you guys aware of any insured banks that insure, maybe not Bitcoin, but that insure the fiat? I'm still kind of foggy on how that really works.
So I don't know of any banks that will custody crypto as of today. Zero. There are some banks that provide collateral and financing for fiat side of crypto trades, but I don't know of any banks that have come out officially and announced that they custody crypto. So crypto is custody is a big problem. So in my view, until the custody issue is resolved, you're not going to see a lot of banks who are going to be very outspoken about this or openly announce they provide any sort of real banking services for crypto.
I think the Wyoming, what's going on there, could have far-reaching effects, and that could be really positive for this topic. But that remains to be seen, and I think we're still a ways away from there. Piper, what have you seen? Anything on your end?
I don't remember all their finer points, but Cumberland has had a crypto arm for over 10 years now. I don't know how far reaching that is, honestly, but they're the bank that backs platforms like Coinbase. So there are offshoots of financial institutions that do digital asset management.
Definitely
yeah, you can see more and more. Like I said, I did mention Cumberland earlier, but yeah, I mean, you can hold. You do have to have a high net worth. Yeah, I think you've got to have a net worth over 10 million in assets to be able to hold your crypto there. I'm not really sure what Wave Financials.
Not many people.
Yeah, I mean, if you got 10 million in crypto assets, then yeah, call them.
Banks like Avanti, right, in Wyoming, Caitlin Long is spearheading that, and Kraken. These are digital banks that technically are applying for a charter now. Avanti, I believe, already got a routing number, which is a big deal. But you have sort of like a hierarchy of banks. So you have the federal charter of banks, none of which I believe provide crypto banking or deposit services. But then you have lower tiers of banks. You have the regional banks, you have the trusts, Wyoming Trust and statutory trusts. So you have an entire hierarchy of participants, some of which do provide these services. But generally speaking, I think the best known examples of true digital banks that are going to come out in the future are probably going to come out of Wyoming, like Avanti or Kraken or Nebraska, of course, because they're just copying what Wyoming is doing.
Yeah, I've heard of some rumblings about Nebraska. I know one project that's, I believe, acquired a majority stake in the bank or acquired the bank total, and they're pushing for the digital charter. So it's pretty interesting stuff. I think the next 2 years or so are going to have a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
For sure. There was one question here that Randall asked about Milo. They basically do collateralized loans that are tied to a 30-year fixed, and they've had some pretty decent success with it. Usually these collateralized loans that you see, they're short-term loans. They're 6 months to a year. And then usually what happens is, you would get like a regular fiat loan to pay off your crypto loan. But this one, there's another company that's doing them as well. I forget the name right now, but that's really all it is. You're people leveraging their Bitcoin, Ethereum or whatever, and getting 60, 70, maybe 50% sometimes LTV.
Yeah. It can be confusing because, I mean, it sounds like a mortgage, but like Piper said, you're literally just borrowing against your crypto, either long-term or short-term. So it's not a real mortgage, if you will, for all intents.
Yeah. And then there's I figured there's home HELOCs, right, that are blockchain based, and there's definitely lenders popping up all over.
There's BlockFi, there's Figure, there's a bunch of crypto lending platforms, some of which unfortunately are going through hard times for certain reasons, but yeah.
Yeah. And then you have other lenders. Yeah, some new lenders are utilizing blockchain technology just on not as far as crypto, but just blockchain for efficiency purposes and automation, and you're seeing some new developments there. So, the technology itself is not just crypto, and I think it's going to change a lot of things, a lot of the way we do things in a lot of ways, and I'm excited for it.
All right. Awesome, fascinating stuff. Again, if you have a question you think of later, please reach out to any of the speakers.
Yeah, our emails are on the screen. Please reach out.
Yeah, we'll be keeping this conversation going on at ALTA 1 in October in San Diego. So if you're interested in joining us at lovely Hotel Del, that'll be a wonderful site. We'll have lots of great content. Again, just as a reminder, if you missed parts of today's webinar, or if you think others in your office would benefit from listening, recording will be available at alta.org/webinars. And as I mentioned, you also get an email with a link to the recording and to get a copy of the presentation. And with that, I apologize, we're a little bit over, but we didn't even get to the NFTs or the metaverse or how blockchain could impact, land records going forward.
That's a whole other webinar.
That's right. With that, Piper, Alex, Andy, thank you for sharing your expertise on cryptocurrency and real estate transactions.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, guys. My sincerest apologies for my visual absence. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. All right, take care, everyone.
Take
All
care.
the best.